Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to all who are joining us live, those who are watching this whenever you're watching it, however you're watching it. We're so glad you're with us. We'll start formally in 4 more minutes. And this is a great time to settle in, close the excess tabs and screens, windows in front of you that may be distracting. Do whatever you need to do so that you can take refuge in this brief practice together. And as people have started to do, please feel free to check in using the chat function where you're joining us from, what your intention for this practice may be. If there are people, excuse me, whom you are holding in your heart for healing at this time. We also very much bring into our hearts and minds the ongoing conflict in Israel and Palestine, the whole region, especially all those who are still being held hostage, their families, all the innocents on all sides who are so deeply impacted by this conflict. We pray for those who are displaced from their homes to be able to return soon, and for the suffering to end. For those of you just joining us, again, welcome. Please settle in. And if you'd like to share any check-in in the chat function, we always welcome that. So again, welcome. Hello, I'm Rabbi Jordan Bendat-Appell. I'm a senior faculty fellow at the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. And as always, it's just really so lovely and personally so meaningful to be practicing with you all in this space. Really so pleased to welcome those joining us from all over. And you can continue to check in as I welcome us and frame our practice today, if you'd like. If you are joining us for the first time, a big special welcome to you. And if you're new to the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, welcome, and want to really encourage you to check out our other offerings. Big thanks to Natalie, who's helping on tech today, who is posting different links in the chat so you can see the many resources that IJS has available to you. And to, you may know other people who might be interested in any of these resources. Please feel free to share them. And also check out the IJS YouTube channel. There's a lot of great videos and content there to support you year-round, including a number of these daily sits are posted there as well. And you can find more of these resources online. There's really a tremendous amount available. And also just to say, we can't do this without your support. We're really so grateful for everybody's support in helping us offer these sits and other offerings like this without charge. You can sponsor a daily sit for $180. We certainly welcome donations of any amount and greatly appreciate them. One other announcement, that registration is now open for Earth Moon Mindfulness with our friend and teacher Kohenet Kashira Halev Fife for a journey through the year. It sounds like it's going to be amazing. There's more information there in the chat as well. Check it out. Should be wonderful. So I'm your teacher today, and really very pleased to have this opportunity to share a few thoughts on our practice today. Natalie, if you're able to, whenever you get a chance to please share that document. Thank you. Let me take a step back for a moment. It's often the case in life that one feels, or speaking personally, I feel as though things are conspiring, forces are conspiring in my life to embattle we feel embattled, and as though the conditions in our lives, big things, small things, some elements that are really within our control, some things are very much out of our control, but it can sometimes feel as though everything is making us feel small and tight. Or rather, that is the habitual response that we may feel towards all these elements in our lives that are challenging, less than perfect, sometimes incredibly upsetting, scary, depressing. And of course, we're joining together today on the anniversary of the September 11th attacks, as well, following a US presidential debate last night. And of course, just an ongoing horrific unfolding of events in Israel and Gaza. And so it makes sense that we may walk through our day and feel tight and defensive and squeezed. And the question must be asked, certainly in the context of our spiritual practice and really in the context of having a human heart and wanting to be in the world not just tight and constricted and with layers and layers of shields and armor around us as we may feel like we need, but rather with a quality of openness, expansiveness, and that can be very hard to access at different times, and yet it is perhaps especially in the times when it's most difficult to access that it's especially healthy for us to be cultivating an experience of spaciousness. There's a passage in this week's Haftarah from the prophet Isaiah, Yeshayahu, which you see here coming from chapter 54. And we're going to look at just two verses, verse 2 and verse 4 today, as really inspiration for our practice. And this haftarah always comes, connected with the Torah portion we're reading this week, Ki Tetzei. It's always just a few weeks before Rosh Hashanah begins. And my invitation is to see it within that context of offering a practice for opening, which is also supporting our teshuvah, our recalibration that we do during the season. And so I wanted to, again, shine a light on these words from Isaiah because I find them incredibly profound and really speak to this practice in not just beautiful poetic ways, but I find very practical ways. So here's what Isaiah says. Harchivi makom ohalech, v'riot mishkenotayich yatu, al tachsochi, ha'arichi metarayich v'tedayich chazeki. Enlarge the size of your tent. Extend the size of your dwelling. Do not stint. Lengthen the ropes and drive the pegs firm. So let's unpack this a little bit. So the first statement here is go big. Expand the size of your tent, which I read as saying expand how you are present, how you are making yourself manifest in the space that you are occupying in this world. Where is your tent? And you may feel that you have to make your tent very small and very tight, but perhaps there's a way to expand it, to enlarge the size of your tent. And of course, for the Hebrew readers there who are with us, you may also be picking up on the second word there, mekom. Makom meaning place or site or space, literally, but it's also a common name for the divine, for God. And so there's it's almost a name that is pointing towards a quality of omnipresence, experience of the divine in which the divine is really felt present. And so one way to read Isaiah here is to say, expand the divine footprint of your tent. Perhaps weave into the ways in which you are setting up in this life. You set up your camp. Perhaps there's more of a sense of divinity, of holiness that is present in that space that you are occupying. And then don't stint, which is, I think, to say you are going to have, as a human being, the natural tendency to want to, again, keep that tent tight and small, which feels safe. But Isaiah is, I believe, encouraging us to see if we can open up our tent some more. And he suggests we do it in two ways. And I want to take the second one first. Drive the pegs firm. The pegs, yated, a stake. So feel yourself grounded, staked into the ground, rooted, settled. And so certainly in our practice, that is perhaps the first place to go. Feel grounded, feel rooted. Feel the contact of between your body and the floor, your chair. Drive the pegs firm. And it's actually by driving the pegs firm that we're then also able to lengthen the ropes, to extend the ropes, which I think about and I experience in my practice as really the breath. That especially when I'm feeling embattled, I notice my breath is very tight and constricted. But this instruction that Isaiah is offering us is to let those ropes be lengthened. So we are grounded, but we also allow for this expansion with our breath. And perhaps the breath can be a bit more deep and a bit more extended than maybe your natural pattern of breathing. It's something to experiment with in our practice today. And lastly, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly, and if you'd like to stay after the session in our conversation after 1 o'clock Eastern, we can dig into this some more. And there are really important resonances with the Torah reading, especially the passage regarding Amalek that we read about this week. But here's what Isaiah says. Fear not, al tiri, ki lo tevoshi, ve'al tikalmi, ki lo tachpiri, ki voshit alumayich tishkachi, ve'cherpat almunotayich, lo tizkari od, which I translated as, fear not, you shall not be ashamed. Do not cringe, you shall not be disgraced. The embarrassment of your youth you shall forget, and the taunts toward your widowhood you shall remember no more. So again, there's a lot to unpack here, but I want to underline one essential piece that I believe we don't talk about enough in our mindfulness practice, because often in religious life, spiritual life, we are, at least for me, I'm really aware of the way in which memory is a very important part, an essential part, a holy part of our practice. And it's a spiritual technology that Judaism celebrates and sees as central. But we don't often talk about the importance of forgetfulness, or perhaps said differently, especially in the context of our practice, a kind of putting down or intentionally turning away from. And I think Isaiah here is offering really important instructions. You may be inclined to sit in your meditation, or to walk through your life, more importantly, and to be overcome and overwhelmed and just surrounded by memory and negative memories. When I read The Embarrassment of Your Youth, there are a few examples, again, I could share more later, that really come to mind. Things that happened to me as a young person that have stayed with me and have had a way of keeping me small and tight and afraid and thinking poorly about myself. Or, as Isaiah continues, the taunts towards your widowhood. So many of us have experienced suffering, and then to feel that social pressures and judgments against us can really be incredibly emotionally damaging towards our own self-esteem, our own sense of self-worth. And so Isaiah is saying, what are the things that you need to put down that you may be inclined to be so focused on? They're not resolved. They may never be resolved, but they hold your heart captive. Of course, it's essential that we remember difficult things and we work with them. But I think Isaiah is pointing us towards a different kind of experience in which we're really just squeezed by these things unnecessarily, these bad memories, perhaps these traumas. And so in a gentle way in our practice, we can cultivate a capacity of what I think of as a kind of mindful forgetting, or intentionally putting down, or intentionally and lovingly acknowledging that one needs to put something aside in order to receive something new. This new year, this new life, the new life in every moment. And so perhaps this is a key to enabling us to feel open and expansive to, as Isaiah says, Harchivi makom ohalech, to expand the place of your tent. So my invitation for our practice today, for about the next 15 minutes, is to sit with that. To begin by putting the pegs in firmly, and as we breathe, to allow the cords to be loose and lengthened. And as we sit there with that, we don't need to go looking for the bad memories. But if they come and if they have a hold, perhaps it's a loving bow that we offer to all those memories. And we allow ourselves to forget them, to put them down and know that we can return to them later and work with them in a healthy way. But for now, we are putting them down and receiving the expansive gift of this life, this moment as it unfolds. And so in a moment, I'll ring a bell, which I'll also conclude the period of meditation with. Thank you. As we do every day that we meet together, we will seal our practice with Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish, and after that, I'll sound the shofar as we do every day in this month of Elul. And just to say, tomorrow we'll be back at 12:30. And at the end of the session, if you'd like to stay on for an additional 15 minutes to discuss the practice, it'd be wonderful. So Mourner's Kaddish, I invite you to unmute if you'd like, stand if you'd like, and if you'd like to share in the chat anybody who in particular you're thinking about for Kaddish today. And I'm thinking of all those victims of September 11th as well. Yit Gadal, Vit Kadash,
Yekadashime Rabbi,
David Kadash Rabba
Yalmadi
Kadiva Kirche
Yekmakate,
Utmakute
Hayafon,
Hayafon
Yalfon, Kaid,
Yumifon
Yekadis,
Hayedaka Israel
Abala, Visam,
Abala
Yamim,
Sam Karubi
Rabban Barak,
Yeshme
Yamim,
Elam
Shaman, Vitinse,
Yetah
Yitajai, Vitale, Vitalash, Mitkish,
Yetador Yetalavi
Ilam,
Yetashal Yetadar Elamin Kal
Kulu Amin,
Shiva Lay
Khamala
Vishvakat
Anishmara, Rachaim Aleinu, Kulu Amin,
Behei Shalom
Shema,
Rabbanim Shema
Yasa Shalom,
Hayam Aleinu V'Yakol
Yisrael,
Yisrael Yamru
Yakol
Say
Amei
shalom
Yisrael,
Nirama,
Shalom
say
Amen.
Nirma
shalom,
Uyasa
Shalom,
Shalom
Kol
Yakol
Yisrael.
Yisrael Yakol Yisrael Tevel V'Yamru Amei
Amen.
I'm gonna stand. Thank you, everybody. Really grateful to you all. Thank you to Natalie for the tech support, and really just so grateful for this community of practitioners and fellow travelers from all over the world. So again, have a really beautiful day. Thank you for your practice. And if you'd like to stay on the call and if you have any questions or comments, observations you'd like to share, please do so in the chat. It's helpful if you put in all bold, all caps, question or something like that. And so lovely to get some messages from old dear friends. Thank you. Maybe if I could actually just start with a note, a direct message somebody sent me while I was teaching. A close reader noticed some of the language from L'Chadodi appearing in verse 4 from Isaiah. And Gold Star, that is absolutely right. And this passage in Isaiah, this Haftorah, and we saw it last week with last week's Haftorah, this part of Isaiah really has the core material that the author of that mystical poem that we begin Kabbalat Shabbat Friday night with, Alkabetz, writing in Tzfat in the 16th century, he was drawing from this language from Isaiah, and it's beautiful language about opening, expanding, and kind of actively cultivating these really beautiful qualities of being. Oh, that's great, Deborah. Enjoy chanting this beautiful Haftorah. Great. Any other questions, comments, observations anybody would like to share? Here we go. Question. Are we concerned about the widening of the tense base in the context of conquering more land, occupying Gaza, etc. Certainly not how I would relate to this text and this teaching. I definitely see it as a kind of call to spiritually, emotionally, personally feeling more expansive, as opposed to instructions for in a literal sense. So it's a good question, and I think also just underlines the ways in which text can be used in so many different ways, and it's really up to the reader, the learner, to really own how we're interpreting our texts. Yeah. Another just comment: why would people be cruel to a widow? It's a great question. Why are people cruel to others who are in pain, or who are disempowered? I don't know, but the language I find very powerful. That it is shining a light on these experiences that we have each had as human beings in different ways, in which we have felt belittled, embattled, people picking on us, taunting us, etc. Another question here. I was thinking of the Rav Kook teaching about circumcising our heart and the idea of opening, widening our tent, our makom. Wondering if you can speak about I lost it. Pain and powerful feelings we feel as our hearts break wide open. Yeah, that language of circumcising our heart, we find it in Rav Kook for sure, but also it just directly from the Torah as well. It's language that's used in Devarim for sure, and in other places as well, I believe. And it's a metaphor that I resonate with, is about removing that which covers over our ability to feel. And I think that's very much a part of this larger dynamic that we were practicing with today. What are the things that keep us feeling a certain way? And are there active practices that we can do to shift that, if that's what we need, to not feel locked into feeling the way that we may habitually find ourselves feeling? I think that's probably at the core of both of these ideas. What needs to be removed or forgotten so that we can turn into receiving a kind of a fresh experience? Thank you. Okay, another question. Do you envision any specific place, thing, being where you place what you need to set apart from your attention? That's a great question. I think it's really what feels skillful for each of us. It may be helpful. I've done this in the past personally, to have in mind a kind of a clear image in my mind for how I'm going to relate to something I'm feeling. And of course, when we're feeling something, we're experiencing it in our physical bodies, our emotional selves, our minds are thinking about it, telling stories about it. And it may be helpful to assign a kind of tone or image or something to that feeling that may otherwise be so abstract and hard to pin down that it's hard to know what to do with it. So if it is helpful for you to identify something you're feeling with in a certain way, like as an image, I'm feeling this, like this literal weight that I'm feeling on my shoulders, and I can visualize myself removing that weight and then putting it somewhere, and actually picture that somewhere. Imagining that literally may help you feel it. And so that's something to experiment with. I often, uh, I said this in the instructions, or at least briefly alluded to it, but I often, when I'm sitting, when I'm moving through my day, and there are those memories that are taking over my attention and my heart space, I often find that my first impulse is to like want to fight them, and that instead I'm training in a quality of really bowing to those feelings, acknowledging them and the power of them, and that they come from somewhere, and even that there may be very important Torah wisdom to learn from that difficult feeling. But that if it is too difficult to learn from, and if it is taking over all of my heart space, and I want to be available for the other people in my life and the other elements of my life, and not just perseverate on this difficult emotion, then I bow to it, which to me helps to acknowledge it and acknowledge that it's not my enemy. It's not coming from nowhere, but it is coming from somewhere. It's there, and not just to be disregarded or always pushed aside, but more, I hear you, I see you. I'm not, I don't want you to be in charge right now. I know there's something to learn from you, and I'm going to come back to you later. That's more of the sensibility that I bring to it. Okay, see the source sheet is coming. Great. Wonderful. Well, unless there are any more questions, maybe, great. Maybe we'll close now. And again, just thank you everybody for your time here, and the link will be fixed. And also maybe just one quick thing, I just to close the loop, because I mentioned it in the teaching. One of the passages that we read in this week's Torah portion, which is cultivate, which has many different components, laws within it, a lot of them. There's a passage in chapter 25, which is about remembering to forget Amalek. And I would encourage people to reflect on it in a similar way as we reflected upon today. When is it important to turn away from something, which can be called forgetting? But I want to raise it up in a kind of a sacred way, to actively know that there's something that may easily take over our consciousness, our heart space, and that we are empowered to cultivate a reality in which those things don't necessarily need to be in charge, but we still know that they're there. So I think there's a lot to practice with and reflect upon, and really grateful for this holy community of practice. Again, thanks everybody. I'll be back hosting tomorrow. Rabbi Sarah Brandis will be teaching. And again, thanks to Natalie for your tech support and for sending people the sheet. Have a great